There is no blue pigment in a blue eye. None. Not a trace. If you could dissolve the iris of the bluest eye on Earth and run it through a spectrometer, you would find no blue molecule, no blue crystal, no blue anything. Blue eyes are an illusion, a trick of scattered light, the same physics that makes the sky look blue on a cloudless afternoon. Most people go their entire lives without knowing that. And that single fact, once you sit with it, changes the way you see every pair of eyes you'll ever look into again. Because it raises a question most of us have never thought to ask. If blue isn't real, then what is real? What color in the human eye is actually, physically, genuinely there? The answer is golden, and it belongs to fewer than 1 in 20 people alive. They're called amber eyes. You may have seen them once, maybe twice in your life. A solid, warm, honey-colored iris with no flecks, no rings, no shifts between shades. Just gold. Uniform, steady, glowing, like light is somehow coming from inside the eye rather than bouncing off it. People describe them as looking like the eyes of a wolf. And that comparison is not poetic. It's biological. It's the same pigment, the exact same molecule, sitting in the exact same tissue, doing the exact same thing. In wolves, it's the most common eye color. In humans, it's one of the rarest on the planet. And the reason for that gap, the reason a color that nature clearly loves in almost every predatory species became nearly invisible in ours, is a story about pigment, about light, about how the human body paints its most intimate canvas, and about what happens when that canvas is almost entirely bare. To understand what makes amber eyes so unusual, you have to understand what makes all eyes look the way they do. And this is where it gets strange, because the answer, for most eye colors, is basically nothing. The colored part of your eye is called the iris. It has 2 layers. The back layer, called the epithelium, is the same in almost everyone. It's dark, brownish-black, packed with melanin. That part doesn't change much. The front layer, called the stroma, is where the story lives. The stroma is made of collagen fibers, and woven through those fibers are specialized cells called melanocytes. These cells can produce 2 types of pigment. The first is eumelanin, a dark brown to black pigment. That's the one that makes brown eyes brown. The second is pheomelanin, and pheomelanin is different. It's reddish yellow, warm. It's also the pigment that makes red hair red. In a brown eye, the stroma is dense with eumelanin, so much of it that nearly all incoming light is absorbed. The eye just looks dark. In a blue eye, something completely different is happening. The stroma contains almost no pigment at all. It's essentially transparent. But when white light enters that clear tissue and hits the collagen fibers, the shorter wavelengths, the blues, scatter more than the longer ones. They bounce back toward the viewer, and the eye appears blue. It's the same phenomenon that paints the sky. Physicists call it the Tyndall effect. Some call it Rayleigh scattering. But whatever you call it, the bottom line is this: a blue eye is not blue, it's empty. And the emptiness, when lit, looks like sky. I think about that sometimes. That the most romanticized eye color in human history, the one poets have written about for centuries, is made of nothing. Literally nothing. It's absence dressed in light. Green eyes are a half step in the same direction. A small amount of yellowish pigment called lipochrome sits in the stroma. When light scatters through and mixes with that faint yellow, the eye looks green. But it's still mostly a light trick, still mostly structure. The green you see is not a green molecule, and that brings us to amber. Because amber eyes break the pattern. In an amber iris, the stroma is loaded with pheomelanin, that warm reddish-yellow pigment. There is very little eumelanin to darken it. And the concentration of pheomelanin is high enough that the color you see, that gold, that honey, that copper, is the pigment itself. No illusion, no scattering, no trick of physics dressed up as color. Amber is real. When you look into an amber eye, you are looking at one of the only places in the human iris where the visible color and the physical pigment are the same thing. The gold is not light pretending to be gold. The gold is gold. And in a body full of optical illusions, that feels like something worth pausing on. The rarity of amber eyes sits somewhere around 5% of the global population, though some estimates place it even lower. It varies by region. You'll find it a little more commonly among people of Spanish descent, across parts of South America, in South and East Asia, and in pockets of South Africa. But everywhere, it's uncommon. It's not just rare, it's unpredictably rare, because the genetics behind it are enormously complex. At least 16 genes are involved in determining eye color. Not one, not two, 16. The major players are called OCA2 and HERC2, and they regulate how much melanin your melanocytes produce and where they deposit it. But the balance that produces amber, that precise ratio of high pheomelanin and low eumelanin, requires a specific alignment of gene variants that doesn't happen easily. And the trait is recessive. Both parents have to carry the right combination. Even then, it's not guaranteed. Two parents with brown eyes can produce a child with amber eyes if the right silent genes converge. And two parents with amber eyes can, in rare circumstances, produce a child whose eyes settle into hazel or brown. It arrives like a whisper across generations. No one chooses it. No one predicts it. And here's something that deepened the whole picture for me. Every baby is born with an unfinished iris. Inside the womb, melanocytes exist in the stroma, but they haven't been activated yet. There's no light in there. So many newborns, particularly those with lighter skin, open their eyes for the first time and the world sees blue or gray. Not because the baby has blue eyes, but because the pigment hasn't arrived yet. Over the next several months, as light hits the retina and the body begins to respond, those melanocytes wake up. They start producing melanin. The iris slowly fills with pigment. For most children, this process finishes somewhere between 6 and 9 months, though subtle changes can continue for years. And for a small, quiet fraction of those children, what emerges is not the brown of their parents, not the blue of the sky illusion, but something else entirely. Something warm and golden and solid. Amber. It's the color that only appears when the body produces exactly the right pigment, in exactly the right amount, and doesn't overshoot into brown or undershoot into hazel. A narrow window. A precision that feels almost accidental, almost like the body stumbled onto something it wasn't entirely trying to make. If you've been watching this far, and you've started seeing eyes differently, consider subscribing. There's more here that will change how you look at the human body and the quiet science hidden inside it. Now, the wolf comparison. People call amber eyes wolf eyes, and that nickname has stuck for a reason that goes deeper than aesthetics. Wolves, across nearly every species, have amber or golden irises. It's their default. The same pigment, pheomelanin, concentrated in the same tissue, producing the same warm gold. Eagles have it, owls have it, big cats, dogs, certain fish, pigeons, all of them. In the animal kingdom, amber isn't exotic, it's ordinary, it's everywhere. But in humans, that same pigment, expressed in that same way, is startlingly rare. The predator's gaze, the one that evolution perfected across hundreds of species, flickers to life in fewer than 1 in 20 human beings. Think about what that means. The color that nature chose, again and again, for creatures built to hunt, to watch, to survive on the sharpness of their vision, almost vanished in us. Nobody is entirely sure why. One part of the answer might be this. In humans, The dominant evolutionary direction for eyes went the other way, toward brown, toward more melanin, not less. Brown eyes, with their dense eumelanin, offer the best natural protection against ultraviolet light. They absorb more radiation. They shield the delicate structures behind the iris. In a species that evolved under the equatorial sun, brown was the safest option, and it spread accordingly. Today, somewhere between 70 and 80% of all humans have brown eyes. Then, somewhere between 6 and 10,000 years ago, something else happened. A single person, somewhere near the Black Sea, was born with a mutation in a gene called HERC2. That mutation acted like a switch. It dialed down the production of melanin in the iris, almost entirely. And that person became the ancestor of every blue-eyed human alive today. A geneticist named Hans Eyberg, working at the University of Copenhagen, traced that lineage across hundreds of individuals from Denmark, Turkey, and Jordan. The genetic signature was nearly identical in all of them. He said something that stayed with me. Originally, we all had brown eyes. A single genetic switch in a single person, thousands of years ago, and now hundreds of millions of people carry the result. Blue spread. Green emerged from its edges. Hazel blurred the boundaries. But amber, the pigment color, the real color, stayed rare. Because amber doesn't come from turning melanin down. It comes from turning a different melanin up. Pheomelanin, the warm one, the vulnerable one, and the genetic alignment required to produce high pheomelanin with low eumelanin, in the iris specifically, remains uncommon across every population on Earth. That vulnerability is part of the story too. Pheomelanin is not just beautiful, it's delicate. Light-colored eyes, amber included, have less natural protection from ultraviolet radiation. The melanin that shields the deeper structures of the eye is thinner. Brighter light passes through more easily. People with amber eyes often squint sooner in sunlight. They may be more sensitive to glare. And over a lifetime, the lower pigment density leaves them slightly more susceptible to conditions like cataracts and a rare form of eye cancer called uveal melanoma. The beauty comes at a cost, a small one, a manageable one, but a real one. And pheomelanin, specifically, is more photoreactive than its darker cousin. When light strikes it, it generates slightly more oxidative stress. The very molecule that creates that warm golden glow is, at a cellular level, a little more fragile in the presence of the thing that makes it visible. It needs light to be seen. And light is the one thing that wears it down. There is something in that contradiction I keep coming back to. The amber iris is not a fortress. It's closer to stained glass. A thin, luminous membrane that lets more of the world in than it probably should. And in exchange, it glows. And then there's the other amber, the ancient one, the stone. Fossilized tree resin, 30 to 90 million years old, golden and translucent, warm to the touch in a way that cold minerals never are. The Greeks called it electron, the beaming sun. We built an entire word from it, electricity, because when you rub amber against cloth, it gathers a charge. It holds energy. The Germans called it Bernstein, burning stone. For 12,000 years, humans have worn amber against their skin. Baltic traders carried it along the rivers of Europe. Mothers placed it on newborns. Sailors kept it in their pockets against storms. They loved it because it was warm and light and golden, and because it preserved things. A mosquito caught in amber 100 million years ago still has its wings intact. A flower, its petals still spread. The eye color and the stone share a name for a reason that no one formally decided. People looked at these irises and saw the same thing they saw in the resin. Warmth, depth, captured light. Something ancient radiating outward from something small. There is still so much we don't understand about amber eyes. We know the pigment. We know some of the genes. But we don't fully know why this particular combination, this specific ratio, appears where it does and not elsewhere. We don't know why it clusters in some populations and nearly vanishes from others. We don't know whether pheomelanin concentration in the iris has any functional advantage, or whether it's what geneticists might call neutral, a variation that neither helps nor hurts, just persists. And we don't entirely know what it looked like further back. Ancient DNA can tell us about the genes for skin and hair and some aspects of eye pigmentation. But the fine-tuned balance between eumelanin and pheomelanin that separates amber from hazel from light brown is harder to reconstruct from fragments of degraded code buried in bone. The eyes of the deep past are mostly a guess. What we do know is this: color in the human eye is not what we think it is. Brown is pigment. That part is straightforward. But after brown, the rules change. Blue is an absence filled with scattered light. Green is a whisper of yellow seen through a veil of physics. Gray is a thicker fog of the same illusion. Hazel is a territory war between pigment and structure, shifting with the light, never quite settling. And amber, sitting quiet among all of them, is the one that is exactly what it appears to be. No illusion, no scattered wavelength pretending to be a color it isn't. Just a warm molecule, pheomelanin, in a thin living membrane, catching the light and handing it back as gold. The rarest pigment in the human iris. The only common eye color built entirely from what's actually there. I started researching this topic because I thought it was a story about genetics, about alleles and proteins and cellular machinery. And it is that. But it became something else the longer I stayed with it. It became a story about seeing. About the fact that we look into each other's eyes every single day and almost never ask what we're actually looking at. The answer, for most of us, is light performing a magic trick inside a structure thinner than paper. But for a few, for the ones with amber, the answer is the sun in a stone, the warmth in the resin. A color so rare in human tissue that when it appears, it looks like it wandered in from another species entirely. A wolf's gaze in a human face. Something ancient, something warm, something that doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. No blue pigment in a blue eye, but there is gold in a golden one.